British Trout Association fresh trout. This little recipe is so easy. It's not particularly chefy. We're gonna make a bit of a sauce that's a little bit complicated, but effectively what we're gonna do is steam bake a whole fish in the oven. Now, I've been sent this tremendous great rainbow trout. Look at that, it's a monster. I'm gonna include some nice flavors in there, some fennel, some orange, underline the fennel with some fennel seed, a bit of bay leaf, some vermouth, some wild garlic, because that's in season at the moment. You could use normal garlic if it was out of season. Salt, pepper, wrap it all up, chuck it in the Aga. While it's in there baking and steaming away inside its little pouch, I'm gonna whip up a little bit of hollandaise, but a little fishy twist on the hollandaise. I'm gonna finish it with a bit of dill. If you didn't want to go through the whole process of making a hollandaise sauce, you could easily use a bit of mayonnaise and then just go with that instead. I'm gonna make a start by just cutting a few little score lines in the fish just to help get some flavour in there. We don't need to worry about cutting too deep into the flesh. I just want to open the skin up slightly just to give us a little bit of extra access for the flavour to get in there, particularly because it's such a great big fish, this one. So a couple of slices in the top of the fish, and then I'm just going to start adding a few things, and I definitely want to get a bay leaf into each of those little slices there. And then I definitely want some fennel to go in there. Poor old fennel, a bit underused. Now, these vegetables aren't just going to add a bit of flavour, they will add some flavour. I'm going to put some inside the flesh, in through those little slits. I'm also going to just leave a little bit around the outside and some on top and some inside the belly of the fish. Those little herby bits on the top as well. But it's going to give its flavour, but it's also going to then give us a vegetable that we can use too. So fennel seeds on the top as well, and a few inside, like that. And then orange. I think the temptation is always to reach for the lemon when we're thinking about fish, but orange will work really nicely with the bay leaf, and it'll just bring a slightly different feel to the thing. And then most of the flavour from the orange is going to come out of the skin, so make sure you leave the skin on. Squeeze a little bit of that juice over there like that. A couple of bits of orange around it. Oh, it looks like a photograph from a cookery book from the 1970s, but don't worry about that. It's going to be delicious anyway. Wild garlic, get a big old clump of that. I'm going to just scatter a few leaves over the top, and I'm going to push a whole load of it, a whole fistful inside this fish, because it's got a great big cavity there because it's such a big old fish. And then plenty of pepper. I'm using black pepper, you could use white pepper, or even if you fancied it, a few chili flakes. And then some sea salt. Chuck a few more bay leaves about the joint. A good sprinkling of dry vermouth. You could use noilly pras or a little bit of pastis if you prefer, something like that. And then I've got an extra piece of paper here. It's going to go over the top of the fish. I'm going to tuck it in nicely. And I fold these nice bits of paper over the top. A little bit of foil over the top of this tray, just so that we're belt and braces, making sure it's not going to dry out in the oven. Big tray, straight into a hot oven, about 180 degrees. It's going to want about 20 to 25 minutes, and then 5 minutes resting when it comes out. While the trout's cooking, going to whip up a quick hollandaise. I'm going to make a quick sort of cheaty version, so rather than making a fancy reduction with shallots and all sorts, I'm just going to use a little bit of tarragon vinegar. So I've got about a dessert spoon of tarragon vinegar there, which is just cider vinegar with tarragon infused in it. Plain cider vinegar will be fine. 1 egg yolk, nice free range golden egg yolk. And I'm just going to whisk those together in this little bowl until they're nicely broken up. And then you'll notice I'm using a bowl that, a bit like melting chocolate, will take some heat. I can sit it over a pan of simmering water, and that's going to help us not overcook the sabayon, which is the base for the sauce. So when you make a mayonnaise, you blitz raw egg yolk with some acid and some mustard, and you slowly add the oil. In this instance, we cook and slightly stabilize the egg yolk by whisking it with a bit of hot water and some vinegar over a bit of heat. And what that does is stabilize it so that we can add warm butter, hot butter, which I've already got melted over here in my little pan. And that allows us to have that warm, buttery mayonnaise version, which we all know and love, and it's called hollandaise sauce. Okay, so I'll whisk that together, and then I'll pop it on my little bain-marie, simmering away there on the stove, and I'm just gonna keep whisking this while it cooks. And I want to take it to a sort of thick ribbon stage. And if you're not sure, if you overcook it, it'll scramble a bit like egg, and we don't want scrambled egg with little grainy bits in it. We want nice smooth hollandaise. So after 3, 4, 5 minutes, however long it takes, we get to a phase where it thickens up and you can start to see ribbons in it after you've drawn the whisk through it. Take it off the stove. You can see the bowl steaming a bit. Take it off the stove, away from the hot water for a minute. Whisk in a bit of cold air just to help stop it in its tracks, because if it keeps cooking now, that's when it can go wrong, because we'll end up with little grainy bits in there. There's a couple of things that will split a hollandaise, making it thin and all greasy. The first is it can be too hot, second is it can be too cold, and the third is that there's not enough moisture in there to support the emulsification with the amount of butter that we're going to add. So just keep an eye on it and start adding the butter. If it gets too thick or it gets thick enough, stop, because you don't want to make it too thick and split it. If it looks like it's a bit thin and you need to add more butter, you'll have to heat some more up and put it in. When you start, you need to be quite slow until you start to build up an emulsification. Once it starts to come together nicely and you're feeling confident that it won't split, look at that, nice and shiny but not greasy, then you can start to add the butter a little bit more quickly. Once it's nice and thick, like a good thick mayonnaise, you're pretty much there. A pinch of cayenne pepper, a little pinch of salt, a little squeeze of lemon juice. Rather than going with the classic tarragon, I'm going to add a bit of chopped dill. There she is. Had a good 30, maybe 35 minutes in the oven. Oh, hot. Oh, it smells amazing. Just beautifully hollandaise. Let's give it a little sprig of dill and a piece of lemon. Simplicity itself.